Good evening, friends. I'm Dr. Aajay Shah, bringing you this another Facebook Live. Today, I'm joined by one of my good friends and also a coach for myself, also Mike Twombley. Actually, today is a special live because we are planning and proposing a program in October. That program will be a healthy weight loss program. It will be very much evidence-based, science-based, very healthy way of doing it. We will be incorporating all the 6 pillars of healthy lifestyle. We will be also talking about food addiction. We'll be also talking about emotional eating. We'll be also showing you how you can start an exercise program, how you can get a better sleep, how you can also overcome addiction with alcohol and many other substances. So I'm very excited that this program hopefully will start October 1st. So please stay tuned for that. The other excitement I have that I have now my friend for last 20 years and even my coach, Mike, leading the program in October. So Mike will be the lead person for this program. So that's more exciting than anything else. I will be a support person. I'll bring a lot of science, a lot of knowledge, a lot of data, but Mike will be the spokesperson. Mike will guide all of you. Mike will teach all of you, and he will obviously bring the science and the data and the knowledge also. So I'm going to have Mike take over for today's live. Mike will lead us through all the 6 pillars of healthy lifestyle, and then he will also go through this exciting program, which I'm learning myself actually, which Mike, as I understand, has almost mastered and understood the 12-step program of addiction. As I understand, this 12-step program has been very well established for more than 80 years, particularly with alcohol type addiction. And the same 12-step program now has been tried into many other addiction issues, including food addiction. All of us, including myself, have some form of food addiction, whether it's because of stress, whether it's because of comfort we want to achieve or we want to get from the food, or whether it's a true chemical addiction. But this 12-step program has been proven, and Mike actually will lead us and guide us how you can overcome food addiction by following this 12-step program. So let's have Mike take over today and explain us the 6 pillars of healthy lifestyle and also this 12-step program. Go ahead, Mike, please.
Wonderful, Doctor. Well, for what we talked about a lot of tools, and that seems to be kind of the talk of the town, so to speak, with regard to nutrition and fitness for the past, say, 40 years at least. Probably even before that, but in terms of the actual conversation that has been relevant to most of us that are viewing today, the past 40 years has been an off and on again about the different tools and what is the best way to get to weight loss and get to a healthy weight that's going to work for you and I think that one of the missing things that's overstepped is the element of addiction. You mentioned it several times. And that happens to be kind of, the framework, the basement in which that we really have to put some time into to really get that foundation beneath us, because so many tools are really great tools. Your exercise program, your dietary program, the sleep that you get, the relationships that you have, the environment that you build. All of these things are very important tools and definitely relevant to getting from A, where you're at, to B or C, or to the end of the alphabet in terms of your goals. But the tools just don't get reached without the addiction being taken a look at and actually figured out, because it's not enough just to maintain or to look at something and say, okay, I've got this going on, but to actually treat it as a disease in which we as a society don't really view food as an addiction as such. However, we have had plenty of studies on sugar being more addictive than cocaine. 43 rats were given cocaine, got addicted to cocaine, and then switched over to sugar, and they chose 40 of the 43 chose sugar over cocaine. And this has been done time and time again in university settings and labs across the country and the world. And it comes up with the same reaction, and people either don't know how powerful sugar is, or in some cases, it's just such a great cover for the stresses that we have in our lives that it becomes something that is very soothing in the moment. And although that, you know, that very well may be the case, and alcohol is used in much the same way, unfortunately, the damage is such that we lose years of our lives and experiences and relationships along the way, in, again, much the same way that we have seen in alcohol abuse in the past as well. The only problem with this is that it's in just about every food in the supermarket, so we can't escape it. So we really have to face this head on. And we have to figure out what the addiction is, how it impacts us, and how much we're willing to allow that in our lives. And then when we decide that, then figuring out how those tools that we talked about just a little while ago actually fit into being able to work against this taking over our lives. Because ultimately it's about us regaining the power and having the ability to be able to maneuver through life and experience it in the most full way and complete way and the healthiest manner possible. With regard to the heart, you certainly, doctor, are the expert, and we would love to hear you know, how it actually impacts your patients. I would love to hear how, I know that you have really worked with patients and tried to help them to get their hearts healthy, and dietary plans and all these things, and how people fall off time and time again. And I feel like addiction could be, you know, the puzzle piece that is missing that could really give us the opportunity to be able to give back a healthy heart to some of those individuals that just feel as if they failed entirely. And if that being the case, it's a shame, because we really do feel a large, you know, amount of shame in ourselves when we fail in such a way that it fails our family members, it fails our health, it fails our futures.
No, I think, Mike, I 100% agree with you. From my own experience, seeing thousands of patients over the last 40 years, you know, as we know now, obesity is 43% of Americans. So a lot of people are getting obese. Actually, by 2025, 50% of Americans will be obese. And many times, the solution to this obesity has been touted as food we eat, or, you know, exercise we don't do, or whatever addictions we have. But when I look at the details of it, and after learning from you, Mike, I'm realizing more and more it's the food addiction. And I think every person who has obesity has some form of food addiction. So until we address the issue of food addiction, no matter how much we teach them about what type of food to eat, how much to exercise, how much to sleep. So I think attacking the issue of food addiction probably is as important as teaching them how to cook, or how to exercise, or how to eat, or how to sleep. So I think you're right, hitting on the nail, Mike, that we will be teaching them in October, not just the 6 pillars of healthy lifestyle, but also the 12 steps of food addiction. And many people actually will benefit from those 12 steps of food addiction, applying those 12 steps in many areas of their life, including addiction to alcohol, addiction to drugs, even addiction to gambling, addiction to, you know, social media, addiction to porn, addiction to, many other, things which can actually affect our health. So I think please lead us today, and I will fill in as we go, with the 6 pillars. But today I want to hear from you about these 12 steps in a brief way, and we will have more details on these 12 steps in October when we start our program. But today I want to hear those 12 steps and how a person, can join our program in October and learn about these 12 steps.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, going through the 12 steps, it's a pathway, it's a process. It's something that many people have heard from say Alcoholics Anonymous, and it actually is founded in the principles of Alcoholics Anonymous, and it went on to Narcotics Anonymous and Overeaters Anonymous, and there's a long history of this for the past 80 years of this actually developing and being very effective. And that's the reason why I feel that you and I working together on this and actually catering and bringing it into the health field as far as how this is going to help an individual that has an addiction for sugar specifically. And then it can branch out into all the other areas as well, and can be used and utilized in those addictions as well, because addiction really truly is addiction. It's a spurring of dopamine, and then getting that feedback loop of, this is something that excites me. And so coming back to it, it becomes a very chemical transaction, and we go through this transactional way of living rather than it being something that is relationship based and is experience based, and what types of things we want to engage in more. It becomes a chase for that next dopamine hit. And again, with the studies that they find with the mice, they see it in human brains as well when studied. When we have sugar, that dopamine fires, just like you mentioned, the casinos, being something, and social media being something. It's the same exact science going on in our brains, except with this, it adds weight to our body. It takes away health. It causes inflammation. It causes pain and disease. And with that, it takes away years from our lives and experiences along the way. And that being the case, it's a tragedy that our lives become, rather than this celebration of living. And so if you want to get back to that celebration of living, and you really want to pursue the next relationship and event that you're going to have within the family and within your friendships and within the time that we do have here, because it is limited whether we like that or not, it's the reality of our lives. And so making the best of each moment, it ends up being something that enhances every moment, and it makes every moment that much more special when we do acknowledge that first. And then coming from that standpoint, saying, okay, I don't understand why I do what I do, but acknowledging that you are doing things that are not necessarily in alignment with the best thing for you, and then pinpointing it to whatever food that is. Specifically, mine happens to be ice cream. That's something that I love, and pizza. That's something that I love, and I'm drawn to that. It's certainly an addiction. If you talk to anyone that knows me, Little Caesars pizza, ice cream, Oreos, Heath Bits in vanilla ice cream. I can name off a ton of them, and I'm sure that you have your own. But figure out what that is specifically. Don't just be generic about it, that it's sweet foods, or it's salty foods, or it's nicotine, or it's alcohol. But get specific. What is the brand that you like of the vodka that you like? What is the actual type of food that draws you back consistently? When you actually narrow it down and you get it to that point, then at that point, you're starting to see the relationship that you have with that specific food. And then from there, starting to own that transaction and seeing what it's doing to your life. And then as we move forward, we can start to kind of unpack what it's doing within your life itself. And so, what kind of things is this actually taking away from your life as you're engaging in this? Dr. Shah, we talked about this a little while ago, just in kind of throwing around ideas about what we might actually bring up here tonight. And one of those being the interactions that we have with, say, our spouse, or with our loved ones, or with our family, or with our friends, and how these types of chemicals, whether it be sugar, or it be alcohol, or it be any kind of a narcotic drug, or even social media, we sit there at dinner on our phones, two people across from each other, both on each other on the phones, and we're not experiencing one another. We're not truly having this gift of life that we're sharing with one another. And so when your wife or your husband decided to spend the rest of their lives with you, I'm sure it wasn't in the state of you being into your phone or totally intoxicated with a ton of sugar, because you've had just an overconsumption of sugar, and it's just dimmed you down and taken away your personality. It's taken away your interest in the other person sitting across from you. Alcohol does the same thing. We know that. We've seen it plenty of times. And how we engage with one another is affected drastically when we are under the influence of different chemicals and different types of things that come into our body. And sugar happens to be one that does actually create this clouding over our mind and over our personality, where we're not nearly as charming when we're, having eaten a bunch of sugar. We tend to be more of kind of the post-Thanksgiving dinner, kind of laid back and just kind of out of it, and having not a whole lot of interest in the other person. And so we lose this experience with them. And not only is it a tragedy that we lose it, but they lose it from us as well. And so we actually are kind of hurting those people around us that are giving that gift of life and their time to us in the experience as well. So we have some relationship type things to work out as we're going through this process, as we're going through these 12 steps. We want to acknowledge what this is actually taking from our lives, from our own experiences, as well as what it's taking from other people that are around us, that are our loved ones. And how can we reignite those relationships? How can we heal those relationships? And how can we then move forward and say, look, I understand that I've kind of been under this cloud of being engaged with food quite a bit more than I ever imagined I would be. But I do see the addiction now, and I see that I'm going back to it time and time again, and I'm becoming a different person when I'm totally engaged with food in this way. And so
I
I'd
think
like
Mike, let me tell you
yeah,
something. I think
absolutely.
one thing I learned from you today, that it's just not the alcohol or very intense drugs. I think it's as simple as sugar or
Sure.
any kind of refined carb can give us that dopamine surge, and our mind and our brain and our body is no more looking for that dopamine surge or the oxytocin surge from the hugs and the
Yeah.
conversation and the intimacy we can have and the eye contact. And I think all those things are also producing dopamine surge. But when we are overloaded with dopamine surge from the sugar and carbohydrate, simple carbohydrate, refined carbohydrates, many times a lot of fried fatty food, we actually don't have any more desire to have additional dopamine surge because we are already flooded with dopamine. And I think so.
Yeah.
I agree with you. I think it's just not the alcohol and cocaine which intoxicate us enough to not deal with our family and friends, but also as simple as sugar. And I agree with you. I've seen many times after a heavy meal, almost everybody is just sitting, not even conversing, not even taking interest in each other. I've seen many times couples, just sitting, not talking to each other. They are just pretty much, like you said, intoxicated with the sugar and simple carbohydrates. So that's a big learning from you about this as simple as sugar, making us almost asocial, not antisocial, but asocial for sure. So please go ahead and tell us how we can overcome that.
Well, I think the first thing is definitely recognizing it. And so experiencing this. And so the next time you are actually eating something, say a big piece of cake or something like that, really see how it makes you feel around the other people that you're around. When we go out to a date, for that first time and we're really into that other person, we're feeding the other person that bite of cake. When you get deep into the addiction side of this, and I've experienced this drastically myself, and I'm embarrassed to say it, but I've actually had a chance to recognize it and see this now. But I would become more like controlling over my food. Like I wasn't looking to share my food with the person that I'm with. I wasn't looking to hand a bite over to, the other person. It was no longer this romantic and beautiful moment between two people. This was me getting as much of this as I could into my system. And the more we engage with this, the more we actually see this occurring and feel the reaction from the sugar itself. And you'll feel not only the clouding of the mind and the clarity dissipate, but you'll feel like you said, Dr. Shah, and I love having you here with this and being able to, give these scientific terms about the dopamine kick and having that come back to us not reaching for that any longer, because the sugar's already provided in excess of these things, these great things that we're looking for from a hug or an embrace or a kiss. We're no longer looking for any longer, because the sugar has provided that above and beyond what we can handle. And so then at that point, we're kind of just sitting back and we're not engaged. And like you said, it's not necessarily, being antisocial where you're pushing people away, but you are asocial in that you don't really need them. They could be there or not. It wouldn't make a difference. As far as you're concerned, you're totally satisfied in this moment with that sugar rush that you've got and you've experienced. And you'll see this with kids as well. If you watch them at a birthday party, if they're running around and having a great time with one another, you'll see the interactions are very much between the two, the kids. You'll see the looks, the interactions. And then after the birthday cake, you'll start to see that they're doing their own thing. They are just a bunch of, independents out there after they've had this birthday cake, and they're full of energy, still running around like they were before, but it's an entirely different experience where they're islands of energy, balls of energy just running around, no longer worried about or associating with the friends the same way that they had before. And it's an interesting exploration. So as you're gaining this understanding about how it affects you, then at that point, like I said, start to get a feel for that. And then rather than fighting it and seeing it as the demon of the day sort of thing, just realize that this is a chemical interaction in you, and decide how much of that you actually want to be a part of and how much you would like to pull back on that and start to engage in those experiences between you and the next person, the people that are in the room. How important is it for you to engage with them? And that's where you start to see the value in, and it becomes very powerful that these people are more valuable than the experience with the sugar. They are more important than the food. And now all of a sudden you have something that can actually draw you away from the plate.
Yeah, no, I think as we set up our program in October, I think this 12-step program and dealing with food addiction will be as important as, like I said, anything else. And I think all of us have gone through this experience of food addiction. So I think all of us can be an experiment. All of us can be an expert. All of us can learn more from each other. And that's what I like about working with you, Mike, that I think our programs will be more like an interactive program, creating essentially a support group. And we will be setting up a Facebook support group so that way people can interact with each other, people can learn from each other, people can post their progress, people can post what they ate, people can post what they exercise. So this will be truly a comprehensive, holistic program, which will be at extremely low cost. I think both Mike and I understand that our goal is to help people. Our goal here is to not be a billion-dollar Weight Watchers company. Our goal here is to help people. That's our primary goal. And I think we both have taken up this commitment that we will do this thing in a holistic way. We will do this thing in a scientific way. We will do this thing in an effective way. And I expect that people who join this program to lose anywhere from 5 to 10 pounds per month consistently, depending upon where they start, obviously, but they can achieve their weight goal anywhere from 3 to 6 months or a year, wherever they are, and then become lean and have a reverse many of the chronic disease. So I think if you want to just, Mike, tell us in about 5 minutes, just the titles of this 12-step program. What are those titles? Sure. And maybe you can spend maybe 15, 20 seconds on each title.
Sure. The community aspect of it is very, very important for us to be able to create the community. So as you step into this program, we want it to be something where you're coming in to heal yourself and to overcome the addiction that you're experiencing, and then also to become a part of the community so that you can also be something of a support to the next individual that comes along. So that this is not just Dr. Shah and I being able to be the support for everyone, but we can help more individuals as more people come in, experience this change and this overcoming of the addiction that they're fighting, and then be able to be the strength for the next individual. And much in the same way that has really been successful for Alcoholics Anonymous and Narcotics Anonymous and Overeaters Anonymous and Al-Anon for the past 80 years. The big power that it's become has been in their sponsor program, in that there's someone to call, there's someone to contact, there's someone to reach out to when an individual is feeling weak, when an individual is feeling as though they aren't able to say no to whatever it is that's drawing them in. And so being someone who is ready for and interested in both getting over your own addiction and then also becoming a part of the solution on a larger scale is really what we're looking for. So you're going to step into this, and in our step one, we're going to admit that there's this issue that we have. There's this addiction to whatever the food is, and it's hard to say addiction without cringing, but in all reality, it is a chemical reaction that goes on. We've talked about that. So just admitting that there's something that we cannot fight and we can't overcome ourselves, and that's why we're in the shoes that we're in, is that first step of being humble enough to be able to say, I can't do this on my own, and I do have this issue with such and such. And again, fill in the blank with whatever it is that the food is for you. And as I said earlier, be very specific with what those foods are that really grab a hold of you and are causing the conflict on a consistent basis and getting in the way of your goals, your health, and your best life lived moving forward. For step two, it's just accepting that you haven't been able to overcome this yourself, and that having some help in this process is exactly what you need. I myself am in the same shoes. Dr. Shah will tell you he's in the same shoes. I lean on Dr. Shah. Dr. Shah leans on me. And even the strongest trainer in the world out there, no matter what they tell you, they too have someone that is there for them. And it's a community change. If you're ever going to change anything in a large scale and really change something that is powerful in your life, as say sugar, or in the case of something even more outside of the box, and if it is alcohol or it is narcotics or whatever it is, Dr. Shah and I are not limiting this entirely to food, although we're pursuing the weight loss and the health of the heart and the health of the body and the mind specifically. If there is something else, don't feel as though you can't bring that to the table as well, because we're looking for you to be healthy all over, and addiction being the first stumbling point we'd like to get rid of and to help you overcome, and then manage a lifestyle after that actually does help to support that. So both community and relationships are going to be key for you to be able to get past the addiction, and then to be able to live life alongside knowing that addiction does exist. So 3 is just to hand over the what you thought previously about, say, free will and choice, and the idea that you could just will your way to success. All of us thought it at one point. All of us thought that we had total free will, and it is the American dream that you just pull up your bootstraps, just do it, Nike. And there's a ton of those out there. But the reality is that thoughts pop into our head, temptations do as well. And they pop into our minds, and we don't think them up. We don't wish to desire these things that are bad for our health and adding pounds to our hips and our thighs. We don't want those things to be popping into our head. In fact, if we could, we would choose to block them before they even ended up in our minds as a temptation, but we can't. So handing that over and saying, okay, I don't control that, and accepting that in humility is going to be step 3 for us here. Stepping into 4 is committing to actually making that step toward, okay, I'm going to now start to work toward allowing this process to take control of how I'm going to make choices in the future. Very, very important that we do start to commit to truth, that we have to be truthful and honest with both ourselves and then with those around us. Because if we don't open up, if we don't have any kind of a truth and understanding, there's no way that we can honestly face this. So just admitting that this is a part of our existence, that we're fighting this chemical issue with sugar or anything else, that's going to be key. But again, honesty with this is going to be a very tough thing, because many times we'll kind of revert back to it's not that bad, or many times it'll be just a renaming of the sugar, calling it honey or agave, or it's something that is natural, but it's still going to be something that is filled with sugar, and the companies out there will do it as long as you'll allow them to. They'll put something else into these products, call it something else, and it will still be sugar, and it'll still have the same impact on us and our weight, our health, and our mindset. So the fifth step is to share and explore this with other people. With yourself first, obviously, you're going to go through this. You're going to kind of go through this and have this introspection of what you've been through, how this is affecting you, how this is affecting the lives of those around you. And then we're going to step out and actually start to share it with someone else. Very, very important, so that you don't feel alone. A huge part of this problem is that you've sat inside, and in a shameful way many times, I'm sure, you've shamed yourself and made yourself feel bad, as well as felt like the world was looking in on you and thinking bad things as well. And you're not alone with this. So now stepping out and reaching out. And this is where I was speaking about the community, of coming into this with the thought that in the end, you're going to become strong enough to be an individual that someone else can lean and depend on as well. This is where you're going to be able to lean and depend on someone else in the community. Dr. Shah and I are more than happy to have a hand in this with you, but also others as well that you trust, you believe in, you admire, you see the strength in, and utilizing this relationship to be able to say, I have this issue and I would like to share it with you. There's strength and power in voicing what we are dealing with, and then also having someone be able to share with you in return. That relationship and community creates this bond and this ability to be able to overcome, because always two is greater than one. And we've already found out that one is just not enough. So we're stepping out and creating a team of individuals that are here to support and be behind the goal that you have, which is greater health, greater mental clarity, greater goals being achieved, and then ultimately greater experiences in life across the entire long life that you have ahead. Stepping into step 6 is recognizing this not as a defect. And I spoke to Dr. Shah about this, and I think it's huge. Not recognizing this, what you might think of as a weakness, or may have thought of in the past as a weakness, as a defect, but rather just as a feature of who you are and who everyone is in reality. We all are built this way. We're not built to be able to overcome something so powerful as sugar is in our brains, just as we're not built to overcome alcohol addiction, just as we're not built to overcome drug addiction or any of those things either. The reality is that this is a chemical that comes into our body, and the reactions take place in there, and it's in everything in the supermarket. So this has been working on us since we were children. We've been having it in our breakfast cereal since we were kids. This is not a problem that is just a short term. It just came into our lives last week, and we can just toss it aside because it doesn't mean anything to me. It really does. This has been something that has been soothing you since you were a young child. And for me, I know that I used it as a stress reducer. This is something that in a household that wasn't the easiest to grow up in, I used it as a stress reducer. And many people will out there you'll really recognize that in yourself, and you'll see that it was used as a therapeutic modality, it was used medicinally, and it was something that when you had the sugar, it made you feel good as a little kid. But then you come into adulthood, and then it becomes something that you realize that it's starting to affect your health, it's starting to affect your relationship, it's starting to affect your lives and your experiences. And now all of a sudden you gotta kind of pull back up away from and possibly even get rid of that soothing comfort. It's a very difficult thing to do, and even cause nerves and that nervous reaction to come up to a greater level. And it becomes a very tough process. So with that being the case, being able to recognize this not as a defect again, but as a feature of who and what you are and how you're built, just like everyone else is built the same as well. This is something that you're going to have to accept yourself and not shame yourself, not put yourself down, and not beat yourself up in the process of going through this and acknowledging what it is you're dealing with and how exactly you're going to step forward and accept yourself as you are, but also reach for something a little bit more. And so as we do that, we're going to, own these features that are not necessarily those features that you would choose if you could build yourself in this hypothetical world of I could build the perfect me. That's essentially what you're going to want to do over time. And that's what we do with the goals and creating this ideal you in the future. But it's something that we are not there at this time. And that's what helps us to continue to reach to a better place, a better health, a better life. And so owning where you are and then reaching for something just a little bit better with each day is what we're looking for in our step 7. Step 8 is acknowledging that your ingestion of the simple carbohydrates, the sugar, and that it's actually hurt some of the relationships in your life. And this one becomes something that gets real personal. So you're going to start off with this, kind of going through this from a standpoint. Dr. Shah and I are going to be working this week ahead to create kind of a worksheet for you so that you can actually go through this and say, okay, this has affected this relationship with this person. And just as I said before, getting specific with what foods are affecting you, what things, whether it be a brand of, food or type of food or a type of alcohol or a brand of alcohol. Like I said, getting really specific. Now we're getting really specific with the people and the relationships that this being in your life has affected. So has it dumbed you down? Has it kind of fogged you over? Has it created that after Thanksgiving effect where you're not really interested in much going on around you? You're not really engaging with your spouse or your girlfriend or boyfriend. These things, having those specific people's names written out, and then how you feel that you've reacted, and then having conversations with those individuals and asking them directly, how do you see me when I'm eating a lot of these types of foods and when I'm not? Much like you would have the reaction from someone if they were telling you that you're a different person when you're drinking alcohol. You've heard it many times, I'm sure, before, and it is something that we all experience, that when we have alcohol, we're just a different person in a very different way, maybe a little more subtle with regard to how they recognize it. They'll probably notice that you're not quite as engaging, that you don't spend as much time looking into their eyes, like Dr. Shah had mentioned a moment ago, that the hugs and the kisses and that engagement is no longer something that you reach for quite as much when you've eaten a big meal of carbohydrates, sweets, sugars, cake, candy, that sort of a thing. It tends to pull you out of that game of intimacy and connection. And so really going through the people that it affects, how it affects them, and how you are under the influence of sugar and simple carbohydrates is going to be something that we'll want to go through and then repair those relationships. So as we're doing that, we're going to come to 9 and we're going to amend those relationships that you spent time on, really going through and acknowledging in step 8. In 9, we're going to amend those relationships and have small discussions with these individuals and see if you can't maybe tell them, hey, I know that I haven't quite been myself. I haven't quite been that charismatic individual that I maybe once was, or I am when I'm not having those foods coming in. But I do want to be that person. I do want to have those experiences with you. And I did intend when I met you, spent time with you, and fell in love with you, or if it's a daughter or a son, or if it's, someone like that, then I know I'm a different person when I'm there, but I am going to make sure I make time for you and I push that out of the experience so that we're able to really focus on one another, and we can do this. We can kind of reconnect. And that will be very, very important for the relationships in the life. Again, experience is everything. That's the whole point in life, right? And finally, we're going to continue to take the personal inventory of your relationships and your experiences. So as you go through the day-to-day, we're going to make sure that we're spending time on getting a little bit of time to kind of go through these relationships and make sure they're in place. And this is the stage when we get to 10, 11, and 12, where we're starting to get it down, where we've made the amends, we've worked on the relationships, we worked on the actual use of sugar and pushing it to where it needs to be so that you can live the best life possible. And in 10, 11, and 12, we're going to start to have this be a day-to-day practice where we're leaning into those first 1 through 10 steps and giving this some format, some structure, some framework that we can stand on and live in a state of abstinence of sugar and simple carbohydrates. And moving forward, we're going to continue to pay attention to the relationships, pay attention to the experiences that we're having, and make sure that sugar is not creeping its way back into those relationships and in between those relationships and into those experiences, so that we're not losing ground on the positive movements and the steps that we made. And finally, we're going to implement a little bit of time and set aside a little bit of time. It could be 10 minutes, it could be 5 minutes, it could be an hour, depending on who you are and how much you want to be engaged in such a thing as, say, meditation or breathing exercises. Just some time alone and away from the world so that you're able to really focus on your own mind and what's going on in there. So we get some peace, some quiet. It could be a walk on the treadmill or a walk around the neighborhood. It could be with headphones on or nothing at all. But we really, really want to focus on some mental and emotional strength building practices that pull you away from, so that you're not getting everything from outside of yourself with regard to the strength and ability to be able to hold back the temptations of and the potential negative environments that we may run into, and relationships. And Dr. Shah, put it beautifully earlier when we were talking about this exact thing, in that, relationships are such a key thing, and they come in and out of our lives, and whether or not they support the goals that we have really decides and defines whether or not they're a good fit for our lives. But even still, we're not going to be able to totally avoid people that are not in alignment with and going along with our goals themselves. So we're going to have these brushes with individuals that don't believe as we believe, don't have the same goals, don't have the same desires. And when we do, we don't want to fall off as a result of that. So we want some strength to be found inside ourselves. So meditation, exercise of some kind, again, breathing exercises, you're going to find what works well for you, and we can give you lots of suggestions as far as that's concerned. But finding some strength inside yourself and bring yourself into some solitude throughout your day so that you can reassess, reconnect, and refine what is the strength inside of you that's going to hold you through those times when you brush up against relationships and environments that are not necessarily in alignment with what you have in your best interest, your goals, your desires, and what is the healthiest for you, so you can be strong in those moments. And finally, the 12th step is going to be to offer yourself in service to those that potentially could use your help, could use you as a shoulder to lean on, could call on you when they're coming into the program and not quite knowing the best, or someone who's just seasoned and been there all along, but keeping in contact with people that are like-minded and have the same goals and desires to have a healthy lifestyle, and one in which is abstinent from sugar and simple carbohydrates. Those things that are going to be destructive, inflammatory to the internal of the arteries, for instance, bad for your heart health, bad for your body's health, and ultimately going to have us gaining weight and moving away from our health goals, as far as whether it be a weight goal or it be a health goal, it taking us further and further away from living the best life we can possibly have.
So, no, I think this 12-step program is going to be probably the key thing for people who want to lose weight, because like I said earlier, I'm realizing more and more food addiction is the root cause of a lot of this obesity. I don't think it's the processed food. I don't think it's lack of exercise. I think truly it's the food addiction, and addiction to many other things in life. And I think addiction robs away us from health, from time, from relationship, from growth, from our finances. And we all know how terrible an addiction can be. And I think I'm hoping that when we come out with our program in October, an October program, again, people who are listening to this on Facebook Live or on YouTube, if you are interested, please go ahead and say that you are interested either on Facebook or on YouTube, so we can enroll you and we can actually reach out to you when the program really finalized and all the nitty-gritty of the things are known to you. So please go ahead and do that. We will be definitely coming out with this program where all 6 pillars of healthy lifestyle will be taught, and I will take personal interest into that. Mike will be leading, but I'll make sure that I also stay involved as a physician. We will be also talking about 12 steps, just like Mike covered today. But I think I'm very excited. I think this program actually will help me to lose my last 15, 17 pounds, which I want to lose. I've lost 50 pounds over the last 5 years. So I have some experience about, at a personal level, how to lose weight and maintain it. But I've not achieved my goal weight, which I'm hoping to do it with this program in October. So I'll be doing along with all of you, and I think Mike will lead us. So I think, thank you, Mike. I think today we covered a lot of things about weight loss. I think weight loss and obesity prevention has become my mission. Now it's your mission. I've done 34 lives on Facebook, so please watch those 34 lives on YouTube. They're all available. But our program will be summary of hours and hours of my learning. Matter of fact, years and years of my learning and Mike's learning and Mike's experience to install into just 1 hour session every Saturday or Sunday, depending upon what day we decide, just for 4 sessions in 1 month. And you will walk away in those 4 sessions, just 4 hours, with so many tools and so much information that you'll be able to successfully, effectively, in a healthy way, be able to lose weight and become lean. And you will have the lifelong support of the support group, which will be creating, which will be a member of it, even after you finish your October program. So please stay tuned for that. Again, I thank Mike for providing us this 12-step program information, and we'll be back with a live again next week. So thank you, Mike, and have a great evening.
Thank you, Doctor. It's been wonderful, as always.